Hello and welcome to another video on this channel, Whovian Espresso, as I've now renamed it. Today we are going to be talking about the latest episode of Doctor Who in the new series, written by Chris Chibnall as the new showrunner. Obviously there will be spoilers, so if you have not yet seen Doctor Who Series 11 Episode 1, The Woman Who Fell to Earth, then go to BBC iPlayer. I'm sure you can find it there. I don't know how you can watch it in America if you're watching this from America. I don't think you will be though, but yeah. So of course we're going to be talking about Doctor Who Series 11 Episode 1. These are my personal thoughts, so if you disagree with them, fair enough. I'm also going to be talking about what I thought before the episode. I've written some things down about my thoughts before it, which I'll get to in a minute, as well as talk about the main body of the episode, what I thought overall, and then I will be giving it a rating out of 10. So yes, welcome to the Doctor Who reviews for Series 11. This is going to be an interesting journey. I hope you enjoy. So first of all, I'm going to be talking about what I thought before the episode actually aired. I'm not going to lie, I wasn't initially behind the idea of a female Doctor Who. This is not because I'm sexist, it's actually mainly because I thought it didn't make sense at the time. There are 2 points in time where I think this would have made sense to cast a female Doctor. The first point would be any point in the classic series of Doctor Who after John Pertwee. I think anything after John Pertwee would not have worked. Obviously if they cast a Doctor in Tom Baker's role, it may not have worked as well. I'm going to correct myself. I think actually probably after Tom Baker. Anything after Tom Baker I think could have worked as a female Doctor Who. The other point is at the end of Time with the Doctor, just before the regeneration of the 12th Doctor. Not only would this give Stephen Moffat a more interesting character to develop, it's not that he didn't have an interesting character, he had a great character planned out for Peter Capaldi. It's more that it makes out that it makes more sense story-wise. Because at that point, if you did not know, this is a spoiler alert if you have not seen Time with the Doctor, if you did not know, at that point the Doctor is given a new regeneration cycle by the Time Lords. It would make sense to place it here because it's a whole new cycle, so it could have been claimed that a new cycle was a female cycle. And then, because it was before all the female Doctor teasing we really got in the form of Missy and the General, who obviously changed gender during the Series 9 finale. But yeah, that's where I think it would make sense within the actual show's terminology, as in as a story. And then, of course, logically to make it seem more politically accurate as a thing that could happen, as in... I don't really think it was the right time for the Doctor to be turned into a woman, really, personally. Although I have to say it did pay off. So while it wasn't particularly behind the politics of casting the Doctor, as I'll talk about now, which is it feels like it was only done because of #MeToo and all this feminist agenda, which has arisen since just about since Matt Smith left. It's all been up there, and since then it just feels like they're casting her not only to bring the ratings back up, because it's no secret ratings did go down during Peter Capaldi's era, but it just feels like they used her in a way, and which is why one of the reasons why I think it would have worked more on the classic series if they had cast a female Doctor then, because it would have felt less like she was being used. I think it's a bit unfair to Jodie, because she's being used, really, is how I see it. She's being used to bring the ratings back up. What I also thought is, because I'm not really a big fan on Chris Chibnall's previous work on Doctor Who, I'm definitely not what he did on Torchwood. I'm not really that much of a fan of Torchwood full stop in the first 2 seasons. While it worked better format-wise, I preferred the storylines behind Miracle Day and Children of Earth, if I can remember properly. And I do not like any of his Doctor Who episodes. I did for a while like the Silurian 2-parter that he did, but then when I watched Doctor Who and the Silurians, it just felt like the Silurian Series 5 2-parter just felt like a copycat of that. So I'm not a fan of any of Chris Chibnall's work as of currently on Doctor Who. I'm not going to say The Woman Who Fell to Earth is much of an improvement, but it is an improvement on his work on Doctor Who, which I'll get to in a minute, obviously. Poor marketing strategy. I know this is mainly down to the fact that I'm a Doctor Who fan and we're used to getting trailers nearly 6 months in advance. And it has, I guess, if they're trying to use a new marketing strategy, it did pay off, as I'll get to the rating at the end, because they've revealed the overnight rating as if I was waiting for the overnight rating before recording this, because it helps really decipher the overall, like, the overall general, like, opinion of the episode. I also didn't like the music that played with any of the trailers. I suppose with the first ones, they were alright. I did not like that Macklemore song at all. I'm not the only one, so, yeah, it just wasn't a very good song, and it didn't feel very Doctor Who at all. I wasn't a huge fan of the costume when it was first unveiled, or the sonic screwdriver for that matter. It just didn't, I think it's the top. The coat is nice, it feels very classic, and it has grown on me. I like the blue dungarees. I'm not too keen on the t-shirt, it seems a bit boring, if you ask me. It'd be nice to get some colour variation. We will do in the new series because of all the trailers and so on. The lining is quite nice to have a coat. I love the fact that she could put her hood up. That was from my favourite promotional image, where she has the hood up and the sonic screwdriver. So yeah, while I wasn't a huge fan of the costume at first, it is really now just the t-shirt, really. I'm quite happy with the rest of it. Jodie's a great actor, but I feel like she was put in the wrong role. This point I did write, just to clarify, I wrote this before I saw The Woman Who Fell to Earth. Boy, was I proven wrong on that, as I will get to later. I did think I had only seen Jodie in Trust Me, and she played a very tense character, with problems, and I thought, well, that would make a great troubled villain. And there was a video put out just before, and I thought, where she admitted she said maybe I could play a villain, and I do think maybe that would have worked better before I went in to see in the episode. But boy, was I proven wrong on that. Okay. I did say, like, it's just because I believe in Broadchurch she was playing a murderer, wasn't she? I have not seen Broadchurch, so if it's any good, I didn't really watch Broadchurch, mainly because Christian Ball wrote it. I'm only watching Doctor Who because it was Doctor Who. If it was originally Christian or throughout time, I probably would never have watched it. So this is the bit where, I guess not much spoilers up until this point, but in a minute I'm going to get to, like, the real spoilery part. I'm going to signify this by putting up her hood. So if you are still here after this, but if you have not seen the episode, I would strongly advise that you go now, because there is a lot to talk about, and it will kind of spoil your enjoyment of the episode. But yeah, I'm going to give you like 5 seconds to go away, and then I'm going to stop this and change her over. And we're going to talk about the episode as a more spoilery, in-depth thing. So yeah. 3, 2, 1. So, we get on to spoilers now. Doctor Who is back with The Woman Who Fell to Earth. If you have not seen this is your final warning. I'm about to say a spoiler which may or may not ruin your enjoyment of the episode. So yeah, go and watch it. BBC iPlayer, it's on there now. So yeah, Doctor Who's back. Oh my gosh, this next bit made me cringe so much. This is about the opening to episode 1. When it opens with Ryan, as if it was a YouTube video, and this reminded me so much, gave me such a big throwback to Love and Monsters that I actually cringed out loud. I said, oh gosh, you're kidding me. But yeah, it wasn't... I think Ryan as a character very much reminds me of Elton from Love and Monsters. There are a lot of parallels that can be drawn between this episode and Love and Monsters. It is basically, in short, a far superior version of Love and Monsters. But yeah, it opens with Ryan Ryan doing a YouTube video with Hey as its title, which is kind of a bit of a weird, because it didn't look like it was a live stream. So it was just titled Hey, and he's talking about, spoiler alert, the death of his mother. He's talking about a woman saying, I met the most imaginative woman, the most amazing woman. Obviously you're thinking it, of course, because it's the female doctor, you're thinking, oh my god, he's talking about the doctor. But no, he's talking about his mother. That's about the, which is when we get to the next scene. We see him, because dyspraxia, I can't pronounce it, dyspraxia. Ryan has dyspraxia, and he's on a hill in Sheffield on a bike. Yep, this scene, from this scene onwards, I pretty much predicted everything that was going to happen to those characters for the entire... Well, I have one theory that's been proven right from that scene, which we'll get to at the end, because it is incredibly predictable. The moment I heard the line about where Ryan's talking about, where he's trying to, where Ryan's mother is trying to get him to look at his grandfather, Graham, and he says, you mean Graham, because he doesn't consider Graham his grandfather. I knew from that moment that Ryan's mother was going to die. It's his grandmother. I knew from that moment that Sharon D. Clarke's character was going to die. I knew they were doing this to bring, and my theory for the rest of the series is that this has been done to bring, of course, Ryan and Graham closer together as a grandfather-grandson relationship. I knew from that moment that that Grace is gonna die. So yeah, that was a bit of a snag that happened. I knew that very early on. Other things that were predictable. There were some theories that I had going into the episode. I kind of jokingly remarked, I bet you the doctor goes and buys her costume in a charity shop, because I hated the costume and I thought, oh yeah, she probably got that in a charity shop. And that turned out to be true, I guess. So that was kind of funny. I also guessed that weird wiry thing wouldn't be the main villain of the episode, and that they were actually keeping something close to the chest. Because they wouldn't reveal something like that in the marketing campaign, because God forbid that Chris Chibnall could release an actual monster. And yeah, it was incredibly predictable as a story. I knew the bit, you know, the guy, they're on the train, and there's the guy who doesn't want to know anything. I knew he was going to die as well. Well, he didn't die, obviously, but I knew he was, when he said the line about, I have to find a target, and it's like, that creep show, Tim Shaw, I have to find a target and return home with him as like a trophy. I knew it was going to be like Guy who didn't want anything involved. It was just so predictable. It has had cringy lines. Cringy lines. That character again that didn't want to be part of anything. That bit where he's going, I am special. It's just like, are you kidding me, right? Oh God. Yeah, someone's coming to find you. Somebody wants you. Dead. They want you dead. I have to say though, the VFX and that weird swirly thing, and pretty much in general throughout the episode, was fantastic. The new VFX team, I believe, is DNEG. I walk past them every Sunday because I walk past their offices. I have to say that they deserve that Oscar for Blade Runner, and they deserve every BAFTA on the planet for visual effects. I think there's only one, but I don't know if they even do one for BAFTAs. But yeah, the VFX was superb. It was absolutely superb. The companions, 2 out of 3 of them were good. Bradley Walsh and Ryan Sinclair, well, Bradley Walsh and Toussaint Cole as Graham O'Brien and Ryan Sinclair were really good. They were great characters. So was Sharon D. Clarke's character, obviously Grace, who obviously dies at the end. That's the bit I was talking about being predictable. I knew from the moment she was going to die that she appeared on screen and said that line. So yeah, 2 out of 3 of those companions were good, and Grace was also very good. Mandip Gill's Yaz, I feel like she's going to be the Nyssa, or I think it was Nyssa in the classic series, who just ends up doing not much really. She's going to be the Nyssa of series 11. She wasn't given much to do, but when she was quite good. I'll give her. So yeah, she'd be the Nyssa of series 11, So yeah, that's the companions. They're all right, I guess. Most of them were good. I'll give them that. The Doctor. She was the thing that I was probably going into the most unsure about. But coming out of it, she was one of the most satisfying things about the episode. Her performance was fantastic. Jodie Whittaker really, really shows that she can do something other than something dark like I expected from her, which was great. I was really, really happy with that. Obviously, we'll be able to see how she develops as a character over the series 11 as well, so she might end up being a bit, you know, by the end of it, but at the start she's actually very good. I hope it doesn't end up like Peter Capaldi's era, when we have a good Doctor and a bit of a so-so stories, like Peter Capaldi's era, which is pretty much what the story here is. The story here is very so-so, the actual story. Like, all the elements, the great music, the great visual effects, the whole brand new of it, and the new Doctor and the new companions, they're all amazing and overwhelming and so on. But the actual story, which is what I tend to pay attention to the most, was not really there as much as it could have been. And now we need to get on to the villain, which is basically a cross between an Ice Warrior and a Zorbaloff and a Tooth Fairy. So Tim Shah, or Sazam Shah as BBC subtitles have put it, is a bit... He's not the greatest villain. I'm not reeling for him to come back. But one question that does beg the question, is it a bit too dark for family viewing? Which is a question I saw, I think it was The Guardian or The Telegraph post, that maybe the villain was a bit dark, and the headline too dark and dour. Now this is what I'm not about sure about. I think it very finely walks the line of what is appropriate for family viewing. But yeah, it manages, I think it just about manages to stay on the side of it being appropriate, but only just, I suppose. As I mentioned before, great music. The Doctor's theme was amazing, I loved that. The Doctor Who theme was exceptional. Such throwbacks to the classic themes. As well as at the end credits, we have those swirling lights, sort of reminds me of the Colin Baker, Peter Davison, late Tom Baker sort of theme tune. And of course, I have to get on to Grace's death, which it's not that it wasn't poorly executed. It's the emotional response to it. After all the emotional build-up we've made since the show returned, with Rose, Amy, Donna, Clara, even though she came back, that there was always tears in my mother's eyes, and quite often in my eyes as well, and not one tear dropped with this. I don't know if it was just because we didn't spend enough time with Grace, or just because of the character's reaction afterwards. The character's reaction afterwards, I think, is only just better than the reaction that to Adric's death all the way back in season 19, in the classic era. But yeah, I do get a lot of classic era vibes from this. As I mentioned, the Absorbaloff sort of thing, it's like you can't touch it. It's a bit cliche now, again. So that reminds me of the classic era as well. It's a bit of a cross between Love and Monsters and numerous classic episodes. It is by far the closest era or episodes we've had that are closer to sort of the 80s Doctor Who's that we had. The poor story, as I mentioned before, poorly written. I'm not going to say it's executed terribly, it's poorly written. Again, I didn't expect it to be very well written by Chris Chibnall. I'm not a fan of his Doctor Who work. The reason I was really miffed for this new series was the fact that Chris Chibnall was going to be writing it. And we're going to have to wait until a lot later before we get any stories not written by him, because he's also writing episode 2 and we don't know the rest of the stories that he's writing. Obviously we know Chris Chibnall is writing The Ghost Monument, but we don't know what else he's writing. I would presume he's writing episode 10. I'm not too sure about episode 9, but I can guarantee he'll be writing episode 10. And if there is a Christmas special or festive special, then he'll probably write that too. Which kind of worries me because, again, I don't like any of his work that I've seen. I have seen Broadchurch. I should probably check that out, really, at some point. Depends. And there are some incredibly cringy lines. And most of them are given from the character called Carl, who is the guy that I mentioned, who sort of has issues. But his lines were incredibly cringy, particularly when Tim Shaw is trying to take him away and as his trophies. I am important every 5 minutes, and it's actually got on my nerves a bit. The end, not the actual end of the actual main body of the story, the bit on the end where the funeral of Grace, that's sort of in the lines, I guess. But the bit where she's clothes shopping in the charity shop, which I called, that seems a bit tacked on. That feels like it should have been more a part of the story, really. But really it just feels tacked on to the end of the episode. Along with the cliffhanger at the end. The cliffhanger, the lead up to the cliffhanger seems a bit rushed. Like, she's all over the place. She doesn't explain how she gets there or really what she's doing apart from the basics. So she's creating a capsule. It seems a bit rushed at the end to get to that cliffhanger when they could have taken more time over it. The cliffhanger itself is actually pretty good, I'll give it that. The VFX during the cliffhanger was explicit. It was fantastic. It was just so good. That bit where they're in space, it shows how much we've come since, I think, season 19 again, when the Peter Davison's Doctor is floating around in space. I don't know which episode it is, but I've seen clips of it where he's floating around. It's so obviously studio film. None of his hair's going up. He's wearing this ridiculous helmet with no pane in it where the window should be. Well, visor, I guess. Of course, the VFX at the end I've just mentioned. And then, of course, the cast trailer was unnecessary. This is the sort of reels back to the marketing strategy. They had not announced any of the guest cast for Doctor Who Series 11, which led to a coming soon trailer, which is not quite what any of us expected or particularly wanted. So we didn't get any monsters or new... So, well, we probably did get a villain in there somewhere. We didn't get any monsters in the coming soon trailer, but we did get a list of titles, list of names for each of the new actors coming in the coming soon trailer, and that was a bit boring and unnecessary. If they had just announced them all before Doctor Who started, it all seemed rushed running up to the weekend when she was obviously announced as the Doctor. So yeah, that was a bit... They could have announced it around the same time as the writers and directors, you know, but they didn't. And they still haven't announced what the other writers are doing. They've announced what all the directors are doing, I believe, but they haven't announced what all the writers are doing. But yeah, a fantastic new theme song I've already mentioned. It's great. I also thought the crane scene was a highlight of the episode. Jodie Whittaker was at her finest acting-wise in that big moment which has a I am the Doctor moment, as always is a highlight of the episode. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I had to cover. So my overall thoughts was it's a slightly better version of Love and Monsters, with the whole monster being like the Absorbaloff and so on. It is better executed, I'll give it that, and better and written to a higher standard. And also, however, I have to give it the edge as well for the great VFX, better than we've ever had it for the show before. The great music, which I hate to say it, Murray Gold, but he does have a slight edge on you. We'll see how the series plays. It is a bit predictable, but not so that it ruins your enjoyment of the episode. The companions were alright. Yasmin Khan needs to show some improvement for me to like her and not consider her the Nyssa of Series 11. It needs to maintain that line between being too dark for family viewing and not too dark that Doctor Who has always maintained. I just hope Chris Chibnall can keep it firmly on the line and not cross over. Show more emotion, definitely, in future episodes. And Chris Chibnall seriously needs to improve as a writer, because the worst part of this episode was the writing, and that can't happen again. And never pull the cast trailer on us again. Obviously keep up the good work with the VFX, DNEG. Yep, that's pretty much it. So while I'm not completely convinced, I will still tune in next week to see how the story builds up, and probably throughout the series, and I'll try and do a review to see how the story evolves and how Jodie evolves as a doctor. Overall, I give this episode a 7 out of 10. Well, I think I'm giving it a 6.5, close to 7, because it is just that story, but that story is a major part of the episode, and it should not be the way it is. It should not be so poorly written. I have to say that is the main snag, as well as being predictable, and Yasmin needs to improve. So I would say 6.5, probably, for this episode. So yes, that was The Woman Who Found Earth. Next week it's the Ghost Monument. I'm looking forward to that. It looks very interesting. But yeah, see you next week. Hopefully it's just as good, if not better. Hopefully better. I hope Chris Chibnall's writing improves. That is one of the main things that I get from episode 1, is that the writing is not done very well. But yeah, that's all I've got to say. I guess I'll see you next week for my review of The Ghost Monument. So that's all for now. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. You don't have to, but you know, it made me happy. Don't forget to subscribe, like it if you liked it, and comment down below.